Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is Friday, the 15th of December, 2023, and these are the stories that we'll be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with our caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haque Saab's visit to Azad Jammu and Kashmir. This was his day 2 today. A lot of important activities happened today. Whether he addressed a news conference in Muzaffarabad, wherein he said the resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute lies only in plebiscite in accordance with the United Nations Security Council resolutions, also adding that no Indian court or assembly can decide the future of Kashmiris. He also chaired a special meeting of the Azad Jammu and Kashmir cabinet in Muzaffarabad today, where he said that Jammu and Kashmir is an internationally recognized dispute and India cannot get away through its usurping tactics. He also addressed university students, and at the same time he also talked to a delegation of Hurriyat leaders who called him in Muzaffarabad yesterday in fact. The fact remains that since the Indian Supreme Court's decision, the reaction has been very strong from Pakistan's side because it has been biased, it has been not according to the rules and regulations or any humanitarian laws whatsoever. And we've also seen the international condemnation of it, whether it be China, whether it be the OIC, whether it be Turkey, whether it be British MPs who are part of the UK-based Tehreek-e-Kashmir, who have all condemned this decision by the Indian Supreme Court. This is going to be highlighted in our first story. Our second story concerns day 70 of the Gaza war between Israel and Palestine as we speak. A lot of important activities are also occurring. We all know about the United Nations General Assembly session that took place in which a resolution was passed unanimously, but will that resolution have any impact as far as Israel is concerned? Because as far as Israeli comments are concerned, and I'd like to highlight those as well, Israeli Defense Minister saying the attack on Gaza South will surpass that in the north, despite the American pressure advising against it, and also different other Israeli leaders calling for more or less the same. The fact also remains that as per different reports from the outlets and think tanks, what Israel wants to do is ultimately is occupying the Gaza through its military, and of course then settle their citizens in an area that was previously that of Palestine. And of course we all know about the more than 1.8 million Palestinians who've been displaced out of Gaza. The situation is also quite bleak as far as the health of the children, the women is concerned, because of the lack of food, the lack of water, and the lack of medical facility. This and more will be discussed in our second segment. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Indian opposition MPs. 15 of these MPs have been suspended over parliament security breach protests. Now 15 MPs from the opposition have been suspended from the Indian Lok Sabha, or the parliament if you call it, for the remainder of the winter session for misconduct, because they demanded a discussion on the security breach in the Lok Sabha that happened on the 13th of December. 14 of those suspended were from Lok Sabha, and Trinamool MP Derek O'Brien was suspended from the Rajya Sabha as well. And one of the members wasn't even there when all of this happened, and there has been the swift reaction from the opposition as well. This we'll be discussing in our third story. Finally, we'll be talking about the use of coal that has hit a record high in the year 2023. We just finished COP28, and one of the declarations, part of the declaration was to decrease the use of fossil fuel production in the coming years, and of course with certain targets that have been put forward. A lot of people are not agreeing with the terms and conditions that have been put in the final draft deal. Nevertheless, the world coal consumption, ladies and gentlemen, has hit a record high in 2023 but should start declining next year. This has been said by the IAEA. Now the latest forecast comes nearly after 200 countries in this COP28 that I just mentioned adopted a deal stating that the world will be transitioning away from the fossil fuel to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Coal, as you all know, is the largest energy source of carbon dioxide emissions that are responsible for other greenhouse gases for global warming, and that the global warming is something that is not ceasing as we speak. Let's begin with our first story, and that concerns our caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haque Saab's visit to Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Today was day 2. It was a very productive day. He met with many important leaders from Azad Jammu and Kashmir APSC delegation, met with the students of the university, as well as addressed the media. More in the following report.
Caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haque has said the residents of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are potential citizens of Pakistan, and the occupied valley has never been and will never be part of India. Addressing a news conference in Muzaffarabad, the Prime Minister said the resolution of Jammu and Kashmir dispute lies only in plebiscite in accordance with UN Security Council resolutions. He said no Indian court or assembly can decide the future for the Kashmiris.
किसी सूरत में मकबूजा कश्मीर का यकतरफा किसी किस्म का, वो चाहे कोई कोर्ट हो या कोई कानून साज असम्बली हो हिंदुस्तान की, वो किसी सूरत काबिल कबूल नहीं है और न उसकी कोई अहमियत है। हम इसको जूते की नोक पे रखते हैं, ऐसे फ़ैसलों को, ऐसे कवानीन को जिसमें कश्मीरी आवाम का कोई अमल दखल नहीं है। हम चाहते हैं कि हुर्रियत क़यादत को फिल फौर रिहा किया जाए और जो ज़िम्मेदारियां हैं एज एन इंटरम अरेंजमेंट हिंदुस्तान की, हिंदुस्तान का न कश्मीर हिस्सा था, न है और न इंशाल्लाह रहेगा। वो एक अबूरी इंतज़ामिया जो कि यूनाइटेड नेशंस के अंडर वहाँ पे इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं, वो उसी हद में रहें और उस हद को क्रॉस ना करें। हम फोर फ्रंट पे इस जंग में लड़ेंगे। ये वकालत हमारी अपनी ज़मीन की है, हम अपनी ज़मीन की वकालत कर रहे हैं, हम अपने लोगों की वकालत कर रहे हैं।
Kakar said India's illegal and unilateral actions in the occupied valley has only strengthened the Kashmiri resolve to seek freedom from Indian occupation. Referring to his meeting with the Kashmiri leadership in Muzaffarabad, the Prime Minister said another round of talks will be held in Islamabad. He said there will be regular contacts with the Kashmiri leadership in order to present the stance of Kashmiris more effectively to the world. Responding to a question, Anwarul Haq assured to fully support Azad Kashmir government in completion of ongoing projects and initiation of new ones. And for this purpose, a cabinet committee has been constituted. This is Ali Andaz reporting for PTV World.
Now to discuss more on that, we've been joined by Jauhar Saleem Sahab. He's a former Foreign Secretary in the studios. Jauhar Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. It's always a pleasure when we discuss different international issues, and this is of course a very pressing one since the Indian Supreme Court made a decision regarding Article 370 and 35A. Our caretaker Prime Minister in Azad Jammu and Kashmir, while addressing a news conference, says the resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute lies only in plebiscite in accordance with the United Nations Security Council resolutions. This is very important, but looking at the global geostrategic and geopolitical changes and preferences that certain leaders have, do you feel this can be achievable with certain pressure tactics on India? Because we're also seeing China, we're seeing Turkey, we're seeing the OIC taking Pakistan's stand on the situation as well.
Thank you. Firstly, I think this visit by the Prime Minister to Azad Jammu and Kashmir was very symbolic. Naturally, it was to express solidarity with the Kashmiris on this particular occasion in the aftermath of the decisions of the Indian Supreme Court, which in turn were based on unilateral illegal actions that were taken on 5th August 2019. Now, neither those actions of 2019 nor the court's decision holds any value in terms of the nature of this dispute. This is a dispute between two countries. It's a territorial disputes as well, but it's also about the self-determination of Kashmiris. So, and they're very clear United Nations Security Council resolutions, and not just one resolution, a number of resolutions.
Yes.
So I think whatever the Indians do internally, that does not really matter. Having said that, it's still important to raise our voice, because Pakistan has been always providing moral, diplomatic, political support to Kashmiris, and we will continue to do so, of course. And for that, the Prime Minister's visit was a clear signal. Now, in terms of your question, what type of pressure tactics, so to speak, can help in ensuring that those resolutions are implemented? And what are the resolutions' basic mandate? The basic mandate of the resolutions, of those resolutions, is that there should be a plebiscite and a fair and free and independent plebiscite, and that even the mechanisms have been laid out very thoroughly for that type of a plebiscite. And it is something that both countries agreed at the time. It's not just that the UNSC.
It did not happen randomly. There was a proper methodology and procedure to it, which all parties had adhered to.
Exactly. But unfortunately, as we know, for the last 75 years or so, India has continued its illegal occupation and is not willing at all, because gradually they changed their stance. They came up with some excuses. Nehru came up with different excuses. First they delayed it, and eventually they said, well, now that we've held the elections, the state assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir, and they have a special status and everything, so that means that those resolutions are no longer valid. Now that is not what the United Nations Security Council or the international community or the world in general accepts. That is one thing. So in principle, a lot of countries, they have this stance to varying degrees. Certain countries, for example, OIC has a very clear stance, which is 100% in consonance with Pakistan's stance. And then there's Turkey, China, again, their stance is very much in keeping with us.
The whole stance is that the United Nations resolutions need to be adopted in principle.
Exactly. But then there are other countries, and we have to remember that. Countries in Europe, for example, countries like the US. Now, they don't really have a clear stance calling for the implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions. Because what they say is that, okay, it's a bilateral issue which has to be resolved through peaceful dialogue.
But you say it's a bilateral issue. India doesn't even recognize it as a bilateral issue. It says it is an internal issue of India.
Exactly, because they say it is what the word they use is a two-tongue of India, whatever. The point is, Shimla Agreement. Shimla Agreement is there. That's an agreement that Indians signed, and they signed it at a time when Pakistan was perhaps at its weakest, after 1971. Even in that agreement, basically if you thoroughly analyze the clauses of the agreement, so what you see is an interim arrangement had been proposed and agreed by the two countries that they should not be in a state of perpetual hostility until the eventual resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute as per the United Nations Charter. And of course, when we say the United Nations Charter and principles, the United Nations resolutions are part of that charter and principles. So that is what Shimla Agreement is. It's a misconcept. There are analysts who have said that, Shimla Agreement has changed the nature of this, it's now a bilateral dispute. That is a total misconcept. Shimla Agreement only proposed an interim, a situation so that, just to stop hostilities, until the eventual resolution of the problem. Now, I come to the third point. So what do we do? How much pressure we can actually generate on the Indians? And that is the real question. Now, international politics does not work on the basis of principles or values or ideals. At the end of the day, it works on the basis of interests, whose interests are common with whose, who else.
And what is the other party getting out of it?
Exactly, that's how the world works. Now, in that, we see a situation where the Western countries, particularly the US, but also many key European countries, they are in, right now, they are in a fix in terms of China's rise. So they want to contain China very clearly. This is a new containment era, in a way. So in that era, they see India having a very important role in the Indo-Pacific policy, so to speak. India has a very important place. So if that is the case, they then are going to appease India. And they have been doing that for many years. It has been happening. We've seen
ample proof of that.
Exactly. Now, the question is whether it will continue to happen. I mean, for the time being, it seems that is the case. On the other hand, what can Pakistan do about it? We cannot leave out what we have been doing for so many years and what we'll continue to do. Like, our support for Kashmiris will stay intact. Our diplomacy, our political influence, and our soft power, whatever we have, we will employ that for supporting Kashmiris. I think following what has happened in terms of the Indian Supreme Court's decision, Pakistan's diplomacy, and this is a standard practice, it would have been reactivated, and all our diplomatic missions in the world would have started meeting the interlocutors there, and particularly our missions in the United Nations, for instance, in Geneva, in New York, and the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, and some other important countries. So they get particularly activated in such situations, and that is why these statements that you see, for example, from OIC, Turkey, China, of course, it's not automatic, of course. There's a certain.
This is because of Pakistan's diplomatic efforts, and also the fact that a lot of countries understand Pakistan's perspective, because we are on the right side of things and the resolutions and human rights.
That's true, and we have to continue that. It's going to be a long journey. There's no doubt about it.
We've already had such a long journey of almost 7 decades.
Exactly, but in sort of in terms of the history of nations, this is nothing unusual. The apartheid regime in South Africa lasted for a long time. The division of Germany, which was an artificial division of Germany, that lasted for 60, 70 years, or at least until, 91, from the World War for 45 years. So the thing is that, in historical terms, we have to understand that this is, we have to have this struggle for the long haul, and we have to continue, and our time would come,
Inshallah.
I mean, because you see, this state of international politics is not going to last always. Nothing is permanent in international politics, like in other things.
You talked about the Pakistani missions in important countries like the US and the EU, for example. Brussels is a very important capital as well. I would like to refer to what our caretaker Prime Minister, when he met a delegation of Hurriyat leaders in Azad Jammu and Kashmir, he said 2 things, and I'd like to refer to those. He said the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Pakistani missions abroad, quote unquote, will increase ties with international think tanks, media and academia to better highlight the issue of Kashmir at the international level. He also said strategies will be made regarding the case of Kashmir in Washington DC, London, Brussels and other important capitals. I think that reiterates what you've just been saying.
Definitely, and it's very important to come up with this strategy, because sometimes, and I've spent long years in the Foreign Office, I think sometimes, we are too focused on the tactical. So, and for this particular issue, because it's going to be something for the long haul, so I believe we have to have a strategy in place which should have different prongs: the short-term prong, the medium-term prong, the long-term prong, and a game plan as to sort of what our objectives are. Of course, our objectives are to have the UNSC Security Council resolutions implemented on Kashmir, but but how? Of course, and what would be the sort of
because India is not even letting UNMOGIP enter the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir territories,
which is very unfortunate, because the UN MOGIP has been there, and they have played a very important part, because in a situation where India and Pakistan for many years, on the this line of control, there have been so many casualties and so many incidents, and one of the reasons UN MOGIP is there to ensure that those type of things do not happen. And it is very unfortunate that India has not been extending that type of support to UN MOGIP, that Pakistan has done, by the way, always. And that support is very important for their functioning. And their functioning is only helping the 2 countries.
Of course.
It's actually it baffles one.
But what I fail to understand is that India takes a decision, the Indian Supreme Court takes a decision which is not in accordance with international laws, international obligations, especially in context of the United Nations resolutions. Do you feel India can shirk its international obligations under the guise of its so-called legislation and judicial decisions? I'm also quoting the caretaker Prime Minister here.
Well, I mean, countries try to do that, of course, when it doesn't suit them, then they, and quite frankly, the way I see this thing, it was very clear what the Indian Supreme Court was going to do, because even some months ago, in August, I'd seen certain sort of, remarks of the Indian Chief Justice Chandrachud. It was very clear what they were going to do. And I've been saying it before as well, that Article 370, the most important component of that is Article 35A. Because 370 was, to be honest, was redundant. You know why? Because they said, okay, they had a special status. We didn't accept that anyways, because we don't even accept that it's, when we don't accept that it's part of India. So what special status? But this other thing was, that in actual working, Jammu and Kashmir state legislature and the working of the Jammu and Kashmir so-called state government, the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir state government, was no different than the working and functioning of other state governments in India. So it was just a farce, it was a facade. But 35A is important, and why? Because 35A meant that, like the demographic balance there would not be changed, and because you see, if you change that, then you change the nature of the whole dispute.
Of course.
The second thing was that because of 35A, people from other states, Indian states, could not buy property there, So, and they could not settle there. They could not get government jobs there.
And now the whole thing is changing.
So all that is gone. And for the last few years, there has been this issuance of literally like millions of domiciles. There's a clear endeavor to change the demographic of the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, so that the whole dispute basically
fizzles out more or less. This is what India wants. Yeah. This is what India wants, but this is not what Pakistan will let India do or the international body do, because Pakistan, I'm sure, is going to raise it, as it has raised the issue time and again on all the international fora, including the United Nations, the OIC, and all the important countries in the West that matter. So let's see how Pakistan's diplomacy functions now in the wake of this decision that is not only against human laws, or is also has a lot of question marks regarding its legality, because that is something that, okay, internally they might agree to it, but when you look at it from a global perspective, I don't think this is as per any laws or regulations, because they have not been following that altogether from day one.
Yeah, no, it's just basically this decision is just a ploy to give legal cover to the illegal actions of Prime Minister Modi's government on 5th August 2019. That is what the court has done at their behest. And it's very unfortunate, because Indian Supreme Court in yesteryears used to be an institution which Indians looked up to. Remember, this is the institution which in the 70s said that Indira Gandhi's emergency was illegal. I mean, they had given some very, very important independent decisions, but unfortunately it's become blind,
Let's hope, putting the Asia-Pacific strategy of the US aside, putting the intentions that other countries have vis-a-vis India, vis-a-vis the region, I think what can also move in parallel is Indian human rights. They can have their relations with India, but at the same time they should also pressurize India to change its tactics vis-a-vis all the human rights abuses that have been going on. And it's not just in the Indian-held valley, but also within India. But starting from the Indian-held valley, they can press India to at least have a plebiscite before they change the whole demography of the region. I think that will be the most important thing that we would want to see in the coming months.
That would be the challenge for our diplomacy. That would be the challenge for our foreign relations.
Challenge indeed, and challenge accepted. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. Jauhar Saleem, sir, former Foreign Secretary, joining us and discussing, of course, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the decision taken by the Indian Supreme Court and the visit of our caretaker Prime Minister Agha Sahab to Azad Jammu and Kashmir. He has reiterated Pakistan's stance that has also been reiterated by China, the OIC, and Turkey. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns the conflict between Palestine and Israel. Today is day 70 of that conflict, of that war. Let's give you the latest casualty figures. In Gaza, 18,787 have been murdered. 50,897 have been wounded. In occupied West Bank, 289 people have been killed, while 3,365 people have been wounded. Israel has pressed its offensive in the Gaza Strip today after telling key backer US that the war to crush Hamas will last more than several months. US President's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan will also visit Ramallah today for a meeting with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to discuss the situation in Gaza. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also said that the enclave, that Gaza was in collapse. He said, I expect public order to completely break down soon. An even worse situation could unfold, including epidemic diseases and increased pressure for mass displacement into Egypt. A lot of developments that are occurring as far as Gaza is concerned, the West Bank is concerned. International diplomacy is also concerned. We've just talked about Jake Sullivan. We've talked about the US, Israel, and the pressure that Israel has been put on Israel by the US as far as reducing the casualties is concerned. But whether that happens is another thing altogether. Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rehman Al Thani says the war has risked radicalizing a generation across the Middle East. The United Nations officials termed the situation apocalyptic, while the World Health Organization terms it humanity's darkest hour. The World Health Organization says it would be all but impossible to improve the catastrophic situation in Gaza, where medical needs have surged and the risk of disease has grown. This, of course, is a sad reality, and a reality that needs to be accepted by the world, and proper action needed to be taken in that context. We've been joined by Agha, Iqrar, Haroon. He's a senior analyst in the studios. Iqrar sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Iqrar sahab, 70 days have passed since this conflict, this war began, and it shows there's no end in sight. Israel is adamant that it's going to continue even when this conflict is ended. It wants its military to take hold of Gaza. Will that actually happen, or do you feel the world will realize its mistake before it's too late?
I doubt world would realize anything, because world is watching. Whenever there could be a chance of any truce, or you can say ceasefire, there is a country who goes for veto. And until and unless this veto power is there, if you remember in the first week, I think so, we had a show, and I was very categorical about that. Until and unless there is a veto power, you cannot bring anything good out of United Nations. This is my very strong, you can say, opinion since last 30 years in journalism. So that is there, and whatever going on in Europe and other, they are the people, they are common people, citizens who are raising voices, but who cares them? Nobody, because the power lies with the political parties, and political parties all over the world. I mean, I'm talking about the North America and Europe. They are somehow or other psychologically against the Muslims. I mean, this Islamophobia.
All of this has given further impetus to the Islamophobia, and we see further small incidents happening all across the world as a result of this.
Yes, there was an incident of killing one mother and two children, even in America, because they were Muslims. So, Omar, basically, we have to be very clear. The world is divided into two sides. One is on religious basis, Muslims or non-Muslims, and then world is divided into NATO and non-NATO. There is no other such third thing in the world.
All right.
And one, if you allow me,
yes,
it was 90s. I was in Europe that time, and former Yugoslavia was under bombardment, and there was a 24-hour bombardment over there, and almost, according to them, almost more than 500 million people were killed in one night. There was no news in mainstream media, because the media was totally controlled by the powers. So this is not the first time. What about we have already gone through this Bosnia genocide. So you know, there was more than 3 million Muslims killed. So we actually forget. Our memory is very short.
We are short-term as far as memory is concerned, but we need to highlight this again and again, because 70 days have passed and the number of casualties keep on increasing with every passing day. US Security Advisor Jake Sullivan meets with the Israeli Prime Minister and Defense Minister and warns that Israel's fight with Palestine will require a period of time. This is what has been said by Israel, and it will last more than several months, but we will win and we will destroy them, quote unquote. Is this what we're looking at?
Yes, and this one of the Israeli diplomats today, she has given a statement. There is no concept of two-state nation or two-state theory. So that is done. They are going for the one state, that is Israel.
Okay. So I mean, this means that all diplomacy, all the this two-state solution that Israel itself had adhered to, this is something that they had accepted, that they will implement a two-state solution. If they back out on that, then I mean, what is the future of the whole region? Who will help the Palestinians?
Nobody. Simple. And America is little needs some face saving, because the elections are heading. But even Israel is not ready to give a face saving to the American politicians. This is another, you can say, chaotic situation over there.
I'd like to also refer to what Joe Biden says. He has urged Israel to take more care to protect civilians in Gaza. Is this also face saving, or is there some kind of a genuine sentiment behind it?
This is face saving. When you are targeting civilian areas, you are using all your air power, you are using your all rocket power, how can you say you can save some children or women over there and you can kill only the ABC? This is not possible. Air strike is air strike. Bombing is a bombing. Bombing cannot be segregated.
You talk of bombing. Do you know that all the humanitarian organizations that were working there had given their GPS coordinates to Israel? Despite that, they bombarded them.
And even this GPS, rather they sometimes bombard the coordinates where they have.
Exactly.
There were some,
Deliberately.
journalists also. So, Omar, we have to be very clear. We have to be very categorical. This world is only divided into the powerful and the powerless people.
All right. Netanyahu yesterday vowed to carry on until victory. Foreign Minister Eli Cohen says the war will continue with or without international support. Can Israel survive without international support?
International supports mean minus America.
Okay. But you know, international means anything that is outside of Israel. One needs to, you know, it has different
Until
connotations.
unless American stands with them, they don't need anybody. And they know it very well.
All right.
So, and Americans are going to an election, they need a face saving. But it is not working. And I can say this Frankenstein has come out of the control of the American politicians also. Because they need a stop, at least for some time. But no, Israel is not listening them.
All right. I'd like to also refer to the United Nations. We've seen the desperation of Antonio Guterres, who is time and again. We've seen how the Israeli ambassador criticized Antonio Guterres, told him to step down. Then now the United Nations General Assembly has supported a non-binding resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza. Washington has voted against it. But this resolution has been passed. What is the outcome of this resolution, if any?
First of all, we should appreciate United Nations and the Secretary General of United Nations, because he has proven he is staying with the right side of this history. He is very categorical. He tried his level best, and while using the extraordinary powers, he
Article 99.
Exactly, Article 99. But even in the building of United Nations, I believe everybody knows this is maximum what they could do, because the power lies with 5 Ps, and they want one of them. Just this is a very unfortunate, Umar. Even 4 Ps are in favor of any ceasefire. If 1 P differs, the decision of 1 piece is basically the majority decision, and it controls the decision of the Security Council. This is very unfortunate. Look, China is against this, what is going on over there. Russia is against, and even you have seen UK abstain from last voting, if I'm not wrong, and yes, UK also abstain. But problem is this, 1 P is enough to completely bulldoze or bombard any place, either is Iraq or Israel, Afghanistan or even the Libya. This is, we have to basically, come to the, what is to be done actually. World has to review the power of 5 Ps. If really world is in favor of peace, or in, you can say, in the power of any, you can say, platform which can be, you can say, which can be addressed by other people. So there is actually today there is no platform where one can go and get the peace if even 1 P out of 5 is against.
So you feel there needs to be an overhaul of the whole
total
system?
Overhaul the system. Even this, there should not be the expansion of the more peace. Rather, there should be no veto power. That is the issue. Look, in General Assembly, 130 countries voted in favor of Palestine, but only 1 P was enough to, subjugate everybody over there. So these veto powers actually subjugate the whole world, all other 190 or plus countries. Is it not a dilemma to look into or discuss? But I think it will going on, because the structure is so strong and the structure won't allow you or me, I mean the other people, to dismantle it.
You talk about dilemmas. Let's talk about other dilemmas as well. The United Nations estimates 1.9 million of Gaza's 2.4 million people have now been displaced as we speak. What happens to these people? Who will take care of them? Will it be the neighboring countries like Egypt that has its own issues as well? It has just gone through a presidential election. It has other issues. Then there is Jordan as well. You know, every country is not Pakistan. Let's put it that way. Like we welcome the Afghan immigrants for decades. There are no other countries do not follow the same methodology or have this as big a heart as Pakistan has had. What happens to these 1.9 million people who have been displaced or who might never be able to go back to Gaza?
This was actually a strategy of Israel. Kill them or push them towards, particularly to Egypt. They should leave this place, and once they leave this place, this is ours. And strategically, Israel is doing perfect job. So what is the, the future of these people? Unfortunately, for the time being, I don't see any future. That is their future only.
Protests are happening across the world, and in these protests are not only the Muslims and Sikhs and Christians, but also Jewish people from the Jewish faith. I would like to refer to a couple of protests that have been happening in the United States of America, of all places. American Jewish groups have held protests blocking roads in 8 major US cities, demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. There is a majority within the Jewish community as well that wants this to stop, that understand what human values are. But I think this is more of a political game by Israel than of a religious or a community-based game. Or it is not even a game, it's a war or a conflict. Do you feel these voices who are holding these protests or pressurizing different countries will have any effect whatsoever?
They won't, because I mean the decisions are taken by the countries. And this is not the first time. I mean, Omar, actually there's one problem with I'm sorry to mention, particularly with the Muslims. They have never segregated Zionists from the Judaism. Zionism is different, Judaism is different. Judaism, Jews, all other Jews, they don't want to kill everybody. But Zionists are Zionists. They want to kill everybody. They said this is written in our book, which the books they have only with themselves. They don't even share with you.
True.
Because, you know, I've been traveling so much in Middle East. The Middle Eastern Muslims also, I'm talking about the think tanks, they understand this. The Jews, Muslims and Jews and Christians they are living together. They had been living together before Sabra Shatila actions. This is basically a mindset which is greed is the land, the power. That is totally different. You are absolutely right. Jews across the world, in Europe also, they are very important bona fide Jews, rabbis. They are even protesting on streets. They are saying, look, don't do it on our name. Do it yourself. Do it on the name of power.
Even the Pope has taken out statements as far as this conflict is concerned. I'd like to refer now to a call for action that has come from a joint statement published by the British government. And this call for action has come from Australia, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, the EU, Finland, France, Ireland, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland and Britain. And this says, quote unquote, the rise in extremist settler violence committed against Palestinians is unacceptable. When so many countries come together with a statement, does this remain a mere statement or is it a pressure tactic on Israel?
They should talk to America. Okay, don't please go for veto next time, and they should initiate another resolution. Then the things would be normal. But these are again just statements. They are. I am saying the face saving is the problem right now, which is being faced by America as well as by the European countries. Face saving. Otherwise, they can ask. The European Union cannot operate without America, and America cannot operate without the power of the European Union. They should talk to the American president. Okay, don't go for a veto against Palestinian, and we are coming with a resolution for ceasefire.
Well, let's see. Let's hope that some good comes out of all of this. Let's say cautiously optimistic, but cautiously optimistic. As I say, I know you're a bit pessimistic, but I tend to remain.
Omar, I'm
I
not
tend to see the
pessimist. Look,
glass
I'm
as
not
half
pessimist. Basically, I'm a student of philosophy and history. What I have seen in my life. So these are the realities.
I know. These are realities, but of course,
Yes.
let's again then hope for the best as well. Agha, Iqrar, Haroon sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Let's come to our last two stories very, very quickly. The first concerns 15 opposition MPs who've been suspended from the Indian Parliament for disrupting proceedings. The government says don't politicize the security breach issue that happened in Lok Sabha. Now, this also comes at a time when a lot of fingers are pointing towards India. Now, the Congress slams the government over suspension of opposition MPs, says it's murder of democracy. The Trinamool Congress on Thursday criticized the BJP-led central government for suspending its Rajya Sabha MP, called for immediate resignation of Union Home Minister Amit Shah for the Parliament security breach. This is happening in India as we speak. Then finally, we'll be talking about coal. COP28 has just ended, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, one of the resolutions that is part of the deal is to tone down, to reduce the carbon emissions, the fossil fuel emissions, to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 and limit global warming. This said, the IAEA says that this year, 2023, has been a record high as far as the use of coal is concerned. My plea to all of the countries involved, especially those who are emitting fossil fuels, is that try to reduce it earlier than 2050 and try to comply and help those developing countries that are bearing the brunt of climate change because of the emission of fossil fuel. With that, we come to an end of today's Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah on Monday. News story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe and have a wonderful weekend. Allah Hafiz.